This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, the very best podcast for regular comic book fans. I am your host, Mike Rapin, and joining me this week, a phrase from a pop song I simply cannot get out of my head. This week, I am joined by the one and only Brian Murray.
How's it going?
You know, Brian, I'll admit that the pop song that's stuck in my head is an Oasis song. It's Wonderwall, and I don't know why that happened to me today. I came up the stairs, walked through a doorway, and suddenly Wonderwall was in my head, and that's what made me think of you, I guess. That's the implication here.
I did have a huge Oasis fan in phase in 10th grade, so that's weirdly apt.
Perfect. Well, then, I'm glad everything comes together like that. But before we get into talking about comic books, I have one big announcement. This happened a couple weeks ago. If you're a patron, you probably already saw this, but we have a bunch of new IRCB merch that you can get on our website, ircbpodcast.com/shop. We've got a new Totally Not a Cult shirt, an IRCB crew shirt, which has like all the faces of the people who make I Read Comic Books possible, an episode 400 cover shirt. And if you're a patron, you can get 25% off by joining our Patreon, and I will send you a special promo code to get 25% off all the merch that we have on there. We scrapped all the old stuff. I brought in a whole bunch of new stuff. And if you want to see something that we could put on our shop, some bit about the show, or just something you think is cool, maybe a piece of artwork we've used in the past, let us know. Send me an email at ircbpodcast@gmail.com. I want to make merch, but like it's usually just stuff I want on a t-shirt, and then we only make one copy and it just comes directly to my house. So if there's something you want, let me know and I'll make it for you, and we'll make it possible. Somebody asked for a t-shirt that was just Danny's face. That's something I'll do if you weren't telling me a joke. So just let me know. Anyways, we're here to talk about comic books. I don't know, Brian, have you seen this new merch? What do you think about it? I don't know. I just threw some things together.
Yeah, no, I think it's cool. Long live the Danny shirt.
I think this has to happen. I'll grab all the emojis off of Discord and put those on the back of it, and on the front it'll just be Danny's portrait that we use for the show covers. But we are here to talk about comic books, so let's just dig into it. Brian, I got two legally mandated questions that I need to ask you, and that's how have you been? How have comic books been?
I've been good. I've been playing a lot of video games as usual. Restarted Cyberpunk 2077 again. I think this is like my fifth playthrough of that stupid game.
Have you beaten it all the way through and you're just playing through it again? Okay.
Yeah, like I know everything in the story by heart. It's just a fun game at this point. Like it feels good to play, so I keep playing it.
I feel like I had that phase with Borderlands, like Borderlands 2, I think, for a while, where it was just like, I love everything stupid about this game, and like the rare loot drop chances were just like too irresistible for me to not like start my game over until a certain point where it's like I need to have 4 people playing or this isn't winnable. But there's like a big chunk of that game you can play by yourself and have a lot of fun. So I'm glad you found that in Cyberpunk.
Yeah, that was like the early signs of your collectible card game habit.
Yes.
Ignore the boxes
to the left. Yeah.
But yeah, comics have been pretty good. I just picked up the Kong Godzilla Humble Bundle, so I'm excited to dig into that. The one thing that I did read in preparation for today, because this is our Goodreads Book of the Month theme.
I should have said that, yeah.
We chose books from the comic book Dark Ages, that is to say 2000 to 2009.
Yeah.
And you and I, it's funny, we kind of bookended because my choice was Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1 from 2000. This is written by Brian Michael Bendis with pencils by Mark Bagley, inks by Art Tibbert and Dan Panosian, colors by Steve Buccellato?
Buccello? I don't know.
Buccellato, I think is how it is.
Okay.
Apologies to any Italian listeners. Also on colors, Marie Javins, color graphics and transparency digital. Letters by Richard Starkings and Troy Pateri, Wes Abbott and Albert DeChesney. A lot of folks on this book, which seems to be my pattern now that I think about it. I show up with a book that had 9,000 people touching it.
Right.
But this was like the book that kicked off the Ultimate Universe. For better or for worse.
I will discuss the worst later.
This one was good. It was very like standard, like it did not really break new ground for a Spider-Man book, but what it is very like it's a very competent telling of the Spider-Man origin story. I wish the dialogue wasn't so like locked into the year 2000. Like,
Yeah.
it's obviously not as bad as how we actually talked to each other in 2000, but there is definitely some language in there that like we know not to use the word spaz anymore. Like, we know that that's an offensive term, and this book has it every 6 pages, which is not great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good book. I love that Uncle Ben is kind of like an aging hippie in this series. Very like peace and love, and also probably like got arrested at a protest at some point in the past. He's got the ponytail, the long gray ponytail.
Oh man, I forgot about the ponytail. Yeah. Oh man, you're like bringing back very fond memories of this series for me, Brian. I love it.
Yeah, I mean it's Uncle Ben, so you know, spoiler alert, it doesn't really matter what he looks like for long. Though in this version, he gets killed in a home invasion.
Yeah.
Instead of just being dropped on the street. They still like want you to think it's the same guy. Peter definitely thinks it's the same guy that he failed to stop at the wrestling match, or after the wrestling match. But we don't actually know that for sure, I don't think. It seems like he seems to recognize him, I guess, but I have my doubts. I think it would be a more interesting story if it wasn't the same guy.
Yeah, I mean, and I think with the Ultimate Universe, they kind of had, again, I will discuss more on this later, free reign to kind of do whatever they wanted while keeping the ideas the same, right? It was that Ultimate Spider-Man book to me was like such a beautiful re-envisioning of a character that like I knew and I understood, and it felt like more modern, and it felt like they weren't trying to hold on to the old trappings outside of the staples that we knew we need to have. Spider-Man's got to get bit by a spider. Uncle Ben's got to get killed. Spider-Man's going to feel guilt about that forever. And that's pretty much it. Like, what the specifics are to make that happen aren't so important, I think.
Yeah, and I think part of why it like felt so familiar to me is that it feels a lot like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
Like, and like, they're not actually that similar, because at first I was like, oh yeah, these are like basically the same, and then I thought about it for 2 seconds. I was like, no, this is very different.
Right.
Green Goblin was not a giant fire hurling monster in the Raimi movie. I don't know if 2002 CGI could have handled that.
No. We all saw Hulk from 2003.
Yeah. But it's definitely a Spider-Man movie of the year 2000.
Yeah.
And so is this. So it's like a convergent evolution, what we call it.
Right. Well, you know, I'm glad that you read this book, if only because I was tempted to dig into like Ultimate Fantastic Four. Like, something about the 2000s made me try to steer away from what was happening with DC and really focus in on the Marvel books that I liked. And I was like, well, I can't just read New X-Men because I feel like that would be cheating. And I can't just read, you know, some of the Daredevil, Brubaker stuff, Bendis stuff, because I feel like that would be cheating too. Like, these are books that I think we know to be very, very good. I think this Ultimate Spider-Man book is also up there, but I do think that it is overshadowed by the eventual Miles Morales that comes out of like the end of Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe. Because I do think that ultimately, for lack of a better word, that is the true thing that I take away from that series, or from that universe, is that we got Miles Morales and how impactful that character has become. And it wouldn't have been possible without this Ultimate Spider-Man, where Bendis is kind of flipping the narrative a little bit to try to create this brand new type of character, ultimately to bring him to death so that Miles Morales can show up and be the real star of the show. So yeah, I don't know. I have very fond memories of this book. I guess, does it hold up for you outside of maybe some of the verbiage and the Brian Michael Bendis of it all?
Yeah, other than being kind of dated,
Sure.
It definitely holds up. I actually really liked the art, and like the more I think about it, the more I like it, because it feels very similar to what I would think of as like modern comic art. You know, like anything you'd see in a big 2 book of the last decade, but it's just like a little more cartoony, and the colors are a little brighter and more saturated in a way that just like really felt more comics to me.
Yeah, Mark Bagley has a very distinct style, obviously. I mean, like, every comic book artist has its distinct style. That's such a weird phrase for me to say, but like
A
Mark Bagley,
recognizable style.
yes, a recognizable style that does feel less house than like some other artists, right? Like I think like a like a Ryan Otley draws very distinct comic book art. Like a David Finch, we're going to talk about, draws a very specific type of comic book art. Bagley definitely feels like he could draw youth comics, like comics for young audiences, and it would super work, but he can do these more teen-oriented, adult-oriented comics, and they still feel comic booky because they have a cartoony vibe to them in a way that is very specific to comic books, where you're like, this isn't childish, this is just good art that fits the comic book style. I'm glad it still hits.
It's like it's realistic in an unreal way. I don't know how to phrase it. Like, people don't look absurd, they don't look like cartoon characters, they look like people, just comic book people.
Yeah. And Peter Parker has the like parted hair in this one, right? Like he's that to me, I always remember being like, look at this Jonathan Taylor Thomas looking motherfucker here, right? Like
absolute dweeb.
Yeah.
In the elder millennial sense.
Yeah. Man, no, I'm so glad. I will say, like, just to keep harping on this Ultimate Spider-Man book, because I really truly love that. Like, it got me into trying out characters that weren't just X-Men characters. Like, this to me was like my foray into saying, oh, I understand Peter Parker, let's see what's going on in the 616. This run in particular has a bit in it where eventually Peter Parker starts dating Kitty Pryde, and something in my head was like, this is the most perfect union of people I could have ever thought of, right? It never could work in the 616, but for some reason, the way that Bendis writes it alongside whoever was doing Ultimate X-Men at the same time, it totally works. And that to me is like some of the fondest memories I have of this series, of them actually being able to date, actually being able to be superheroes, having this like, oh, you live upstate, I live downtown, like how are we going to meet? Like it feels truly like, oh, we've created this perfect drama dilemma while also putting the superhero bullshit into it. So like, I really, really love this run.
Yeah, unfortunately, that did put into my head the image of Elliot Page and Tobey Maguire making out, and that made me throw up in my brain a little bit.
Oh, brother.
For some reason, that just does not work for me.
I feel ya. Well, yeah, let me talk about what I read for this, because like I said, I also went the Ultimate route. I was thinking, what can I read from the 2000s that I never really put my eyes on before, or something that I genuinely had no interest in. And so I picked up Ultimatum. This is the crossover event that ruined the Ultimate Universe for many people, for most people. I think it genuinely destroyed what was good about the Ultimate Universe. And yeah, this is written by Jeff Loeb, art by David Finch, inks by Danny Mickey, colors by Steve Furchow, and letters by RS and Comic Craft. Excuse me. The premise of this book, for those of you who are not in the know, and you should never be in the know, you should not have read this, and if you did read this, I'm very sorry. Wanda Maximoff and Pietro Maximoff were killed, maybe, during something that had to do with Ultron. There's no background given besides this, just that Peter and Wanda are dead, and Magneto is upset. So in a series of quick flashes to some major players in the Ultimate Universe at the time, Peter Parker, Mary Jane, Kitty Pryde, Gwen Stacy are on a train. Some of the X-Men are walking the streets of New York. Nightcrawler, Angel, Daredevil, or Dazzler, who I think they just keep calling Allison, and Beast, Captain America, and Iron Man are just like hanging out, and the Fantastic Four are up in their big Fantastic Four building. Suddenly, New York gets hit with a giant tidal wave, and a bunch of people suddenly die. Just no questions, no, oh no, did we know if this character did? No, Beast is dead. Allison is dead, or we don't know where she is. Nightcrawler's dead. Cyclops and Marvel Girl, Jean Grey, Professor X, and Wolverine are at the X Mansion. They're suddenly realizing that people are dying. The book goes on to essentially be like, Magneto did all this and everybody's pissed. What are we going to do? Dr. Doom's Latveria gets frozen over. Otherwise, the rest of the world unaffected for some reason. It turns out Magneto has switched the Earth's axis or something.
The magnetic poles.
The poles or something. And he caused all these weather incursions. Reed Richards thinks it's Namor.
Of course
there's something there's something about, we also meet like Hank Pym and Jan Pym and Hawkeye are hanging out together in Tony Stark's mansion, because that's where the Avengers headquarters is. That gets flooded. We don't know where Jane Pym is. Hawkeye manages to get out with Hank Pym. Hank Pym is like the worst person ever imagined, and Hank Pym in 616 is pretty bad. This guy in the Ultimate Universe is even worse, like implications of him like being abusive towards Jane. There is, and I found out.
Is it Jane or Janet?
Janet, thank you, Janet. I wrote Jane at one point in my notes, and I've just been saying that out loud. Anyways, I went to research this a little bit. It turns out in the Ultimates 3, because if you remember back in the day, there was the Ultimates, which is Mark Millar, Ultimates 2, which I think was also Mark Millar, and then Jeff Loeb took over. The story in Ultimates 3 is Hank Pym is under house arrest at Ultimates Mansion. One of Pym's Ultron robots drugs him and leaks a sex tape of Tony Stark and Black Widow to distract from the subsequent murder of Scarlet Witch. Magneto abducts Scarlet Witch's corpse and retreats to the Savage Land, where he's confronted by the Ultimates. Pym and Wasp discover the truth about the Ultron robot, which has adopted the identity of Yellow Jacket, and use the Ultimates' DNA to create android duplicates. Although the true Ultimates destroy their android counterparts and Yellow Jacket, Quicksilver is apparently killed by Hawkeye, I guess. The Wasp then invites Pym to return to the Ultimates, and he accepts for some reason. The mastermind behind the robot's plan is revealed to be Dr. Doom. That's the Ultimates 3, which leads up to Ultimatum, where Magneto's like, well, I'm just going to kill you guys. This universe is super edgy, and it's really cool. I want you to know that. They kill people all the time. By the end of this volume, I'm sorry, I'm spoiling Ultimatum at this point. By the end of this volume, Professor X gets his head twisted off by Magneto. The Sorcerer Supreme gets killed by Dormammu. Angel dies. Wolverine gets vaporized. 3/4 of the Marvel Universe is dead at the end of this. And somehow the Ultimate Universe was supposed to keep going, because this Spider-Man comic book did keep going. And that's how we eventually get the Punisher killing Spider-Man with a sniper, which is a whole thing. And that is how Miles Morales becomes the Spider-Man.
The only Spider-Man.
The Ultimate Spider-Man. So this book was bonkers, as you can tell. It's 5 issues. There's no information in the opening about who anybody is, why they're upset, the context. They're kind of like, you must have been reading everything else. Now you've got to read this. Because if you don't know what's going on with half of these characters, I didn't know why Mary Jane, Gwen Stacy, Kitty Pryde, and Peter Parker were hanging out, but they were. And we don't know, nothing gets resolved with those characters on whether or not they lived or died. Just we know that Peter Parker's swinging around, and that's pretty much it. Kitty Pryde gets told to stay in her place because she's one of the good ones by Wolverine, so she can't help fight anybody.
Yeesh.
And David Finch draws some of the weirdest panels and people you've ever seen. I'm going to put a couple of these in the show notes for folks that are on Patreon, because I think that's the easiest place for me to drop them. But just the most just curvaceous women, the most muscly men. I will say some of the action sequences look really cool in this. A lot of the just punching and buildings exploding look great. Some of the characters' outfits look pretty cool. But on the whole, it's really weird. And Jeff Loeb doesn't know how to write half of these characters either. At one point, they find Nick Fury, who's in an alternate universe, because there was another thing that happened where Nick Fury is in an alternate universe because of a thing called the Squadron Supreme crossover, which we don't have to get into. And at one point, Nick Fury says, I was wondering when you bungholes were going to show up. Does that sound like something Nick Fury would say? I mean, this is Sam Jackson Nick Fury that it's supposed to be, right? Absolutely not.
He just finished a Beavis and Butthead marathon.
He says bunghole. I don't know. David Finch has a very specific way of drawing things that it kind of just made me bonkers throughout the whole thing. But yeah, Jeff Loeb's writing is also weird. At one point, Iron Man says, "Oh my God, OMIGOD," as one word. He tore the adamantium off his skeleton. It's I don't know.
He kicked the highlights out of her hair.
Yeah. That's thank you. That's exactly what I was thinking. There is something that just, I don't know. This feels like the most slapped together event for the sake of having an event. And it ultimately ends. I keep saying ultimate. It's making me very conscious how often I say that word. It really just seemed like we need to shake things up. We need to kill some guys. We either need to end this universe, or we need to get rid of all of the parallels because they're diverting too far from their 616 counterparts to be acceptable as creations, so that we can introduce new characters. I don't know. I remember reading the first issue back in the day. I never finished it, and I remember just being like, "Oh my god, that was bad." The only thing that I could say that is nice that comes out of this book, I guess, or good, is that we get the seeds of Reed Richards being like a paranoid psychopath, which eventually becomes what I think a lot of people liked from the Ultimate Universe, which is the maker, the evil Reed Richards, who like creates these little evolution time bubble things. I think that's cool. I think that kind of started before this book series, but you see even more reasoning for why Reed is like, I can't like let anybody screw around. Also, the Thing straight up murders somebody in this book. It's pretty crazy. So yeah, a lot of stuff happens. It definitely shook things up, but it feels over the top and bad. And this was the end of the decade. I think Marvel had given up on the Ultimate Universe at this point, with the exception of Ultimate Spider-Man, which managed to stick around. So, boy, oh boy, such a weird book. Yeah.
There's always money in the Spider-Man stand.
I know. And it's so weird. You think of a lot of events that happen in the Marvel universe, and usually they're kind of focused around a group or a universe or a corner of the Marvel's like cinematic world. And this one doesn't feel like it focuses on anyone. It feels more like Jeff Loeb wanted to continue his Ultimates 3 run and continue the story about Wanda and Pietro, but he couldn't, and so they did this event to try to wrap it up. But it isn't really about anyone, so you feel like the only thing that changed was the fact that some characters are now dead. And it doesn't, I don't know, to me that doesn't really tell a good story. It just feels like, all right, we need to write these people off, and so we had to do it in the most like what if style way possible, but it turns out that the what if is continuity. You know?
Yeah, I can't stand when they do that, like when big characters die off screen like that. It's just like, oh yeah, it was a big flood. Like we don't get to see Beast's heroic last moment where he, tries to save a kid or is doing something, eugenics-y like Beast eventually gets into.
Yeah.
But
well, Brian, we do get a wonderful panel in this where Angel, full wings, is swimming underwater for some reason to save or find Beast's body. It's very, interesting. Anyways, this was not good. I wouldn't recommend anybody read it, but I had to. I figured I got to dig into what is truly the darkest parts of the 2000s. That isn't a book written by like absolute horrendous human beings, because there are plenty that were published between 2000 and 2009. But yeah, this is a weird, bad one that came out from the big two. So
I guess if you're going to read the Ultimate Universe, start with Spider-Man and pull the ripcord sometime in 2008.
Yeah, that's probably right. I genuinely could do like a 10 years later type of podcast about like the end of the Ultimate Universe before this new Ultimate Universe, and just talk about the stuff that I genuinely think was good that you should read. That's like, this is a fun way to play with these characters without it being an Elseworld story, because Marvel refuses to try anything like that. So, yeah.
I mean, Ultimate Peter Parker would have been 40 this year, so.
Thanks. We got to move on now, I guess. You've hurt me in a way that I can't describe, Brian. Let's talk about comic books that are on the top of our pile, whether they are new or old, or just things we want to get off of our shelves. I do want to shout out some of our folks on the Goodreads, though, that did read books from this time period. So I should say what they read. Evil Black Sheep read Fun Home, a family tragicomic, which everybody should go read that book. It'll break your heart. It hurts a lot, but it's a really good book. Machiavelli read Black Sad, or read a couple of volumes of Black Sad. I've never actually sat down to read that series, even though I know that it's supposed to be very, very good. So just put another book on the pile, I guess.
Yeah.
And Shane read Dr. Doom, The Books of Doom, a comic that I've seen the single issues for so many times, but I've never seen a complete run. Like every time I go into a bargain bin, someone has bought like one of the 5 or 6 issues of that run. And so I've never bought it and read it. But I think now with the Marvel Unlimited subscription, I should probably just sit down and read that, because it's a book all about Dr. Doom. And I think it's a history of like how he got his powers and weird shit that he's into outside of being just like a really smart guy. So thanks for those picks, guys. We appreciate you all out there in the Goodreads. But let me say hello to our Discord friends too. CK this week is going to be reading The Titan, it's a webcomic, and Danny's going to be reading TMNT Shredder #1. How many TMNT books are there? Anyone know? I don't know. That's what I'm wondering. But Brian, let me kick things over to you. What's on the top of your pile this week? I need to stop talking for a second.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be Alien Paradiso. I've been collecting the singles for this, but I haven't actually sat down and read any of them yet.
Okay.
But the trade came out like a week or two back, so now is as good a time as any to dig those out of whatever pile in my living room they're in.
What is this book? So I'm just reading the opening line for the description. Welcome to Paradiso, where the money flows like blood and the blood flows like acid.
Yeah.
What the hell is this?
Yeah. It takes place on like a tropical resort colony, which I think is a fun change of pace because like part of the Aliens whole thing is that like every planet you go to is actually a hostile wasteland.
Right.
Even the ones that seem good at first. So this is like a tropical resort planet for the ultra rich, which means that there's going to be a lot of very bad things happening to very rich people, which is something that I need to see right now.
Yeah.
Just to remind myself that it can happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Danny calls it White Lotus Alien. I haven't seen White Lotus, but now I want to, just so I can like get that reference fully.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to see bad things happen to rich people, White Lotus is the show you should watch. It's pretty great. You do have to put up with white people. You do have to put up with rich white people being shitheads for the most part. But you know, they end up getting theirs usually in the end.
Just alternate episodes of that and Alien Earth to try and get the vibe.
Right. Eventually, it will converge in your mind in the dream, and you'll be very satisfied. Well, let us know how this is. This sounds like it could be a lot of fun to like you said, a fun twist on the alien universe. Because I'm like, oh no, every single story is usually like a decrepit alien or planet that they're trying to like terraform or something like that, right?
Yeah, or it's like a planet that looks nice, and then there's actually a swarm of mutant aliens right underneath the surface that's going to come out and eat your face. Right.
Interesting. Well, let me talk about a book that's on the top of my pile this week, and that is Celebrated Summer. This is by Charles Forsman. As part of my like ongoing, I actually need to get all the books out of my attic that I moved up into my attic in May process. I came across this book. I don't think I've read it, but I own a copy of it. The pitch for the book is road trip. This immortal phrase takes on added layers of meaning as a pair of disaffected youth drop acid and hit the road in this original graphic novel by mini comics mogul Chuck Forsman. Sounds cool? I don't know. Chuck Forsman usually writes comic books that like have characters in them that feel so real it hurts. Like they're exaggerated versions of people, but you're like, oh, I really am upset that like how much you nailed this person and how uncomfortable that makes me feel. It's really not a bad thing. Like I would not say that's a bad thing about their books, but like it's like watching a snake slither up your arm at a zoo, or like that thing where a school keeps cockroaches as class pets and you're holding on to them and you're kind of like, all right, this is way too real. Like behind the glass is fine, but not on my skin. You know, that's what reading Chuck's books are like. So there's an exhilaration, but it's also like very like, I need to go shower now.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what this book is about because, you know, The End of the Fucking World is a great book. A couple of other his stuff is really fun. I read his he did a little book earlier this year called Chersey, I think. It's a short little comic that felt like a 20s era little strip comic book, but it's about this just weird little guy. I don't know how else to describe it. So to get back into some of his like darker like stuff with this Celebrated Summer, I'm looking forward to it. So that should be fun. And it's not too long. It's pretty thin as a book. So finally going to get through some of the books that have just been sitting on my shelves now that I've had to look at them all and individually place them on the shelf and not Marie Kondo them. I figure I should read them before I at least get rid of them. So
yeah, now that you've had to move everything to rearrange your office and
puts things into perspective about how much stuff I buy that I don't like. That's maybe another topic, but yeah. But I don't know. I think from there, Brian, I think we're all set for this week. I think we've covered everything.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about the early 2000s enough. But who knows? Maybe we'll jump into the post credits and Paul will have some thoughts about that. But I think that's going to do it for us this week. I want to thank everybody for listening out there. You're fantastic human beings. Thank you to the folks listening live on Discord. If you're a patron, remember, go get your little discount so that you can buy a new t-shirt off of our store at irscpodcast.com/shop. Thanks to Brian for being on the episode. Thank you to Paul for proof listening. Thank you to Zander for editing. And I think until next time, comics are good, and so are you.